Hello everyone, Cameroni here with a new League Start guide. Here's some clips of what I've managed in SSF on this League Starter. I'll keep some clips going in the background through the campaign and through maps of what I did in SSF. Took me about a week to fully complete the Atlas and kill all the pinnacles using this build, so it is SSF viable if you're want to go that route. I love Trade League too much to ever League Start SSF, so you know, it's a personal choice. Why am I doing Glacial Cascade instead of Ice Nova in 3.27? Glacial Cascade on Elementalist is pretty comfy through the axe and easy to scale on a budget in the first few days of the league. It's easier to scale physical and cold damage instead of just cold damage, since pure cold chads only get Zealotry as a damage aura, and because Hatred is technically a physical aura now. So we get to use Hatred. Yay! We get juicy Herald explosions. I like doing new things. Pretty much nothing changed for Ice Nova Occultist between 3.26 and 3.27. We all know that I'll probably swap to Ice Nova at some point, my beloved, because Vault Ice Nova is just too good. It's my cocaine, my reason for living. But I think this is much better through the campaign and early maps and easier to manage in the first few days of the league. Much smoother. One might even call it buttery. Another side note, this can be done on Occultist as well, and it's quite good on Occultist. You'll just want a power charge stack for it to really take off, which is expensive to do early, which is why I recommend Elementalist. Elementalist is just an easy start. But what about the 50% nerf to golems, Cameroni? Well, I'm glad you asked. A 50% nerf to your golems is... I hesitate to even call it significant. It's a moderate nerf. What a lot of people don't realize is golems were changed to give... The numbers were boosted on the golems themselves for the auras and buffs that they give you, along with 100% increased effect of those. So they are still extremely good, especially since they revive. So that minus 50% is not going to make too big of a difference as far as the early league goes. You'll lose some slight DPS, some slight tank, some slight mana regen and whatnot, but not a huge deal. How the build works in general. You get golems. Golems scale everything you need for the build quite strongly. In brief, you get a stone golem, which gives you increased energy shield and armor, and also life regen, which we turn into ES regen with Zealot's Oath. You get a lightning golem, which gives you cast speed and mana regen, so you don't need to run clarity. You get a flame golem for increased damage and area of effect, and increased area of effect is really important on Glacial Cascade, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then finally, you get an ice golem for increased accuracy, which is worthless, and crit chance, which is huge. We scale our damage with crit multi. Once we have enough crit chance, we scale it with power charges. You can scale it with frenzy charges if you want to keep using Vol Cold Snap. We also scale our damage with Fizz, since Glacial Cascade is a physical spell converted to cold, which means that the heralds work on it. There are a lot of ways to scale it, and then also we scale it with spell levels. You gain charges from power charge on crit linked to your main skill. You get frenzy charges from pressing Vol Cold Snap occasionally. It's an easy frenzy charge generator, especially in the campaign and even in boss arenas, since it generates a frenzy charge every second that it's hitting something. And with the charge mastery, those frenzy charges last for a full 20 seconds. And if we path on the right side of the tree, we get 20% increased, which makes it like 22 seconds, I think. So, pretty good. Practically a lifetime, unless they get stolen by bad map mods. Or rare mobs that delete your charges. Those also exist. Beware. And finally, our main source of damage is we're scaling AoE. Why is AoE important? I'm glad you asked. You see here, these circles overlap. Each overlap means that you increase the damage instance count here in Path of Building by 1. AKA, more AoE equals more better, which is my love language. A side note, on normal Glacial Cascade, if you do it right and you have enough AoE, you'll overlap all or almost all of the bursts and hit the final burst. It's pretty easy, since the small bursts knock back into the next burst, which again knocks back. Glacial Cascade of the Fissure will be the end game once we scale enough AoE to make it less bad. The damage is awesome, but early on it feels pretty bad since it goes really far, but it's really narrow, and so you miss a bunch of mobs when you cast it. It's pretty annoying. Normal Glacial Cascade is way better for mapping and for clear, so that's what we'll be using until we get Giga AoE. Side note, you should be able to overlap all of your bursts with Glacial Cascade just from what you get on the passive tree for increased area of effect and from your golems. Now, what is this build good for? That's a good question. I always start a league with an all-rounder that can do everything. It doesn't excel at anything, but it can do everything in the game. It can do tier 17 maps on a decently low budget. It can do SSF if you like SSF. That'll be slower getting to the point of doing tier 17 maps. I think it took me, I don't know, probably 30 to 40 hours of playtime in SSF before I got to clearing my first tier 17 map. But that's also because I was figuring out the build and experimenting and doing all sorts of crazy things. So it could be done faster than that. On a higher budget, it'll do Ubers, but it'll be slow compared to an Uber bossing build, just like everything is slow compared to an Uber bossing build. It also has fantastic clear. It's not as fast as a bow build, but almost nothing is. But you also don't need a mirror and some change to do Ubers, and you'll die a lot less. Also, the visuals, the sounds. Herald of Ash is so cool. You get Herald of Ash and Herald of Ice. That's enough for me. That should be enough for you too. Also, side note, you'll want the Despair MTX for Herald of Ash if you can swing it. It's the best one. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. This is not as good for Simulacrum as my Ice Nova build. It's also not as good for Delirium as my Ice Nova build, since Vault Ice Nova is just too good. It clears so much. So this doesn't have as much coverage or clear as Ice Nova, but it should do decently in Simulacrum and Delirium. It can also do pretty much whatever else you want it to do. Realistically, I'll scale it decently and then go back to Ice Nova, my beloved, like I always do. This is a much comfier league starter since they nerfed Ice Nova in 3.26. Now moving on to defenses and gear. Defenses for this will be pretty much exactly the same as my Ice Nova Occultist from 3.26. I'm going to scale Energy Shield and Armor, grab Chaos Inoculation, and get as much block and spell block as I can while still having good damage. In the super endgame, I'll also get 90% all resistance. In the early endgame, I also get crit immunity. I'm sure I can sneak in ailment immunity somewhere, or at least something close to it. And then laugh as Shaper launches his nasty balls at me, but can't hurt me because I'm too thick. On top of that, you'll also be freezing and chilling everything and knocking things back, which are both good defensive layers. A quick rundown on the defenses, in case you don't want to comb through my other videos. Feel free to skip this if you're familiar, if you want to run your own defenses. A side note, you don't have to do Armor and Energy Shield. That's just what I prefer. You can do Evasion and Energy Shield, which a lot of other people prefer. You can go pure Energy Shield. It's up to you. But for this, in the Path of Building, at level 84, we can use the best bases in the game for defense. Sacred Chainmail, Divine Crown, Paladin Gloves, and Boots. These all have quite a lot of Energy Shield and Armor on the base. The Chest and Helm, we'll craft with Dense Fossils to get the best prefixes we can. I usually settle for tier 2 or even tier 3 early on. We'll go crazy on them later. This chest right here, I hit in solo self-found pretty easily with Dense Fossils. I think it took me like 5. It's a super easy craft too. Even a caveman can do it. The gist of it is, you slap these yellow chunks that some toddler somewhere is salivating over because they look tasty and choky, slap the oddly shaped and rounded triangle into the circle hole like said toddler, and then slap that abomination onto the sacred and divine gear pieces. On the chest, once you have some nice tasty prefixes, you craft prefixes cannot be changed, and then harvest Reforge Physical to get Fizz damage reduction as a suffix. You might need to repeat that a few times to get other good suffixes. You can also roll with Eldritch Currency, but the extra Fizz damage reduction makes it so we don't need to run Determination. It's up to you on whether you want to use a rare Divine Crown or the Crown of the Inward Eye that drops from Cyrus. You can get +1 power charge on the Cyrus helmet, though it is pretty expensive, so that's what I'll be doing. But the Divine Crown is also really good, especially on a budget. You can get increased area of effect, and Fizz taken as Chaos on it with Eldritch Currency, or if you want to try and fit in some more ores, you can also get Mana Reservation Efficiency as both, I believe it's a suffix, and as an Eldritch implicit, so you can run more stuff. The reason we want our boots, gloves, and helmet to all have armor and ES on them is for this armor ES mastery. 100% is a lot, especially if you have over 3,000 armor and 700 energy shield on your chest. Moving on, in gear, why am I using a staff instead of a wand and shield like everyone else, and like I usually do? We're going to do it to scale our AoE and crit even more. I've done wand and shield so many times that I felt like trying something new, and in my tests thus far, it's actually very good. These nodes on the passive tree are pretty juicy and give us more AoE options than wand and shield. We also get quite a lot of block and spell block with the staff. Moving on, early campaign. You'll start with a typical Witch League start, which unfortunately means Rolling Magma plus Flame Wall plus Holy Flame Totem, since it's just 1,000 times better than everything else. Once you get Glacial Cascade in Act 3, you can swap to that. I think waiting until Act 4 when you get Golems is better though, since Glacial Cascade is kind of annoying to use before you have Golems. In the early campaign, you'll basically dash between objectives as fast as you can, drink your quick silver flask like I drink energy drinks during League start, blow up mobs on the way to the next objective, and repeat. Frostblink is also quite strong in the campaign, so feel free to put your nasty feet all over the mobs too when the occasion calls for it. Also, pick up and identify rare items to vendor. The Golems in Act 4 require chance orbs to purchase. The chance orb costs an orb of fusing, which costs 4 jewelers, which costs 2 alterations each, which means that you need 8 alterations per chance orb. You'll need 3 chance orbs at the beginning of Act 4. So if you didn't manage to drop 3 chance orbs by then, you'll need to buy some with alterations or jewelers or fusings or whatever else you got. So picking up and identifying items is an easy way to make sure that you can get all of your Golems and all of the other gems that we want to buy and level during the campaign. Because you'll also need several orbs of alteration in Act 2 for buying heralds and other gems. I like using Vol Cold Snap in the campaign if I can get it. I usually have to trade for it with an early alchemy or chaos orb. Sometimes I get lucky in the Vol Temple in Act 2 with a corrupt altar, but it's great for generating frenzy charges for some extra damage. It makes your shield charge a little bit faster, and once you get the charge mastery for 100% increased duration, you don't have to press it very often. You'll use Hatred as your main aura once you swap to Glacial Cascade. It is useless before that, so don't turn it on before that, there's no need. And then throw in Herald of Ice and Herald of Purity for extra damage and clear. If you want, you can go for some mana reservation nodes early and also use Herald of Ash early. I usually swap to Herald of Ash in Act 8 when I get my second Ascendancy node. And if you want to be really sweaty and go even faster, eke out everything you can out of the campaign, you can use Hatred only for boss fights and use Haste the rest of the time for that sweet, sweet move speed. Unlike with the Ice Nova League starter, you don't need anything from the lab. Just zoom through the campaign and the Atlas with normal Glacial Cascade. If you do get a Glacial Cascade of the Fisher early, level it in your offhand and swap it in for boss fights. It is really helpful for pinnacle bosses. It's quite a bit more damage, but it feels bad when you're mapping unless you have tons of AoE, which we'll get eventually. At the end of Act 4, you can set up an Arcanist brand with 2 curses and Frost Bomb, which boosts your single target DPS by a ton for a single button press. It is kind of mana greedy, so you'll want to make sure that you have decent mana regen and enough mana to cast all of the curses and Frost Bomb from the Arcanist brand while you're also casting your main skill. And from Act 4 on, it's smooth sailing from there. You can swap to a staff as early as Act 6, but you don't really need to swap until you're ready to start taking the staff nodes on the passive tree, or if you want to use Leap Slam earlier and swap from Shield Charge, or you get a good staff early. If you do get a good staff early, feel free to ditch Shield Charge in Act 3 and grab Leap Slam and faster attacks from the library. I have not found a good staff early on that's good enough to prompt me switching, but you never know. In the late campaign, you don't need to make any changes at all. You just zoom through the rest of it. You can pick up some upgrades along the way. I usually look for better resistance on rings, better resistance and attributes on an amulet, some good resistances, maybe some attributes on a belt, all the sockets that you need on all your other gear. If you're having trouble getting sockets, then around Act 6, when you gamble from Faustus, you'll almost always get a 4-link from him, so it's pretty easy to get all of the sockets and colors that you need just from gambling from Faustus. What early maps looks like. You'll focus on the usual things, completing your Atlas, finding treasures and all of the trash that falls on the ground, biding your time until you hit level 84 and can use the sickest bases, farming currency until you can craft or buy good gear to keep you going through red maps. The main things that you're looking for upgrades in early maps and even mid and late maps. You want a good staff or wand plus shield. It's pretty easy to swap stuff out for a wand and shield on the passive tree if you don't end up getting a staff early enough. Cap your resistances, overcap it by at least 15% if possible, so elemental weakness and scorch don't get you. A divine vessel for the cannot be frozen pantheon buff. That's the best one there is. I will probably be running Arctic Armor before I get that, just so that I don't get frozen, because I hate being frozen. A good graft from the League mechanic. I'm not sure what the best one is yet, since we don't have a whole lot of info on it, but that's something that we'll be looking out for. Get as much armor and ES as you can reasonably. Once you have around 4,000 energy shield, you can get rid of those stinky life nodes and grab Chaos Inoculation. And don't forget to craft useful things on your gear at the crafting bench through early maps and through the campaign. In late maps, you continue with the usual things, do the 4th lab, try and get or buy Glacial Cascade of the Fissure to be leveling up and swapping in for pinnacle bosses. If you don't get one by the time you get to pinnacle bosses and you don't have it leveled up very much, just use Glacial Cascade. Gem levels are important on Glacial Cascade of the Fissure, so if it's not close to or the same level as your normal Glacial Cascade, then just use Glacial Cascade. And then start looking for bases for your first endgame crafts, or if you're not into crafting, save up and liquidate your stuff to buy crafted gear. I'd highly recommend crafting your own though, especially since the gear for this build is so easy to craft. And if you have questions on any of it, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message in game. Cheap upgrades to look for when you're going through maps. You want a good weapon. I am going to go for a staff, so I'll probably go for a +3 staff early on, see if I can get some cast speed, some added cold damage to spell, some increased spell damage, all the usual things you want on the staff. A +1 amulet or replica Dragon Fang Flight for +3 to Glacial Cascade. If I get lucky, I might even snag a +2 amulet. 6 link, preferably you want your first 6 link to be your staff so that you can get a better chest for defense without needing to worry about the sockets on it. Chest pieces that have 6 sockets that are on a good base are always expensive early. So a 6 link staff will be a lot cheaper. And on to end game scaling. Nearing Atlas completion and into the farming stages of end game, the build has a lot of different ways that you can go with it. You can stack power charges and get the Forbidden Flesh and Flame for Forbidden Power, get Relic Ash Boots, Power Charge Rings, all that jazz, just like I do in my Ice Nova build, and several other people do, your typical charge stacker. But at that point, I'd probably just go Ice Nova over Glacial Cascade. I'll probably stack some power charges. I may even get some +1 power charge rings. We'll see. And then stacking spell levels. You can get a +5 staff, get a replica Dragon Fang's Flight, maybe even a +2 or +4 corrupted unique chest, maybe a +2 amulet, maybe a +4 or +8 focused amulet. You can get a lot of spell levels, and spell levels add a ton of DPS. If you're looking for a unique chest to get +2 or +4 on, Incandescent Heart is a great one to look for, or double corrupt yourself, since it has good defensive stats and a lot of extra damage. Another thing you can do is stack Golem effect with cluster jewels and primordial jewels. I'm sure there will be some League mechanic shenanigans to fit in here to also scale our damage in the end game. A quick side note, if you're going to drop some Ascendancy nodes from Elementalist to get some of the Bloodline Ascendancies from the League mechanic, you can really drop everything except the Golem one. That one is just too good, but the rest, feel free to drop. How to use the Path of Building for this build. Feel free to skip this section if you already know what you're doing, but here's a quick rundown. I always have a really detailed Path of Building. There are 3 drop-downs to change and look out for different milestones. In the Tree tab, the Skills tab, and the Items tab. In the Tree tab, you'll have this one here that have different milestones for where you're at. The Skills tab has the same thing. The Items tab, same thing. In the Notes section here, I always have notes for different acts, early maps, late maps, what to do. Most of this is for the campaign to ease your journey through that. The DPS on the mid-budget here is assuming that you have a level 21 corrupted Glacial Cascade of the Fissure, and you're hitting with 3 overlaps. If you follow everything else, you'll have that. I think we can get to 4 overlaps with a bit more AoE, but the circles are too fuzzy and hard to determine at high AoE to see how many overlaps you truly get. For normal Glacial Cascade, determining the damage is a bit more difficult. You need to change this drop down here to initial bursts. You see the full DPS here. and then you multiply this by however many overlaps you think that you're going to get. Be aware that this knocks back enemies, so you may hit them with the first initial burst, and it knocks them back into the second and third, and then the final one, and then you cast again, and you miss with the first burst, so you only hit them with 2 before the final one. And if you're standing in one spot, then eventually you're only going to be hitting them with the second to last burst and the last burst. So you'll have to reposition, or just change your calculations on damage here. But the highest damage you can get would be 3 of these. So it's like 4.1 million DPS-ish. And then you add the final burst here, which is 6 million, which puts us a little over 10 million DPS if you hit all 3 bursts and the final burst. And that's about it. I've only planned out to mid-budget for this build since I'm not planning on scaling this past that. I have too many builds that I want to try, too many ideas percolating in my head. But mid-budget will get you into tier 17 maps and whatever else you may want to farm. By mid-budget, I mean less than 25 divines. As always, I'll be posting daily update videos for the first few days to explain my choices, what I've discovered, and what other viewers have discovered so that you can follow along if you want to. And again, as always, please leave in the comments your suggestions, ideas, criticism, or just leave a like if you like the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.